welcome to another one of Mark's Whiskey Ramblings. As you can see, I'm not in my trusted whiskey basement. No, I am in the shop Cuvée Idée in Hildenberg in Belgium. You will remember we've been with Koen before when we tried that Port Ellen that Cuvée Idée bottled a few ramblings ago. But today we are here to try a new Malts of Scotland bottling, who prides themselves with bottling single casks at cask strength. And whenever they release something new, it is always something to look out for. So that's why we are here today to try the new bottling from Malts of Scotland, and it's their first Isle of Jura. Now, Isle of Jura is a distillery on the Jura Island, of course. It was built in 1810 by Archibald Campbell, but he sold it after a couple of decades, and it closed around the turn of the 20th century. And it lasted until 1960 before two business people rebuilt it and reopened it. And then they called it the Isle of Jura Distillery. Before that, it was called the Small Isles Distillery. Now, Isle of Jura is a special island. It's famed for the fact that it has only a few diuriacs. The diuriacs are the inhabitants of the Isle of Jura. There's only like 200, 250 diuriacs, and they are vastly outnumbered by the deer on the island. There's between 3,000 and 5,000 deer on the island, so they are in much higher numbers than the people who live on the Isle of Jura. But back to the distillery. Well, there is one other thing that I need to tell you about Jura. It's an island that nowadays, with planes and ferries and stuff, it's easy to get to. But about 50 years ago, it was not so. Remember the famous author George Orwell, who wrote in 1948, he wrote the classic 1984 novel on the Isle of Jura. And he, in his memoirs, wrote that getting to the Isle of Jura was something of a military operation. That hard it was to reach the island. Luckily, nowadays, it is not so. But back to the distillery at hand, Isle of Jura. It is the first bottling from Isle of Jura from Malts of Scotland, the German independent bottler. And there is a little story connected to this Isle of Jura. As you know, I am the Toshen man. I love everything that has to do with Ochentoshen, because it's my first big love in whiskey. Now, one of my whiskey friends, Glenn van Bellingen, is the Jura man. We call him the Jura Glen because he, like me, collects everything that has to do with the Isle of Jura distillery. Now, a few weeks ago, during one of the whiskey festivals, the Belgian importer Dominic Broekaert had brought a small cask sample, and he offered it to Glenn van Bellingen and said, "What do you think of this?" Now, Glenn, being the Jura man, being Jura Glen, he sampled the whiskey and he said, "This is the good stuff. Go forth, go back to the warehouse in Paderborn and bottle this, because this is the good stuff." And they did. Malts of Scotland, shrewd business people as they are, with a good nose as well for good whiskey, they listen to their customers, and they actually went ahead and bottled this Isle of Jura. Isle of Jura, 1992. This is a single cask. It was a bourbon hogshead. It yielded 175 bottles only, and it was bottled in November of this year, while it was distilled in April of 1992, making this a veritable 20-year-old Isle of Jura. And it is bottled at a cask strength of 50.3% ABV. So, Isle of Jura, I have to admit, I'm not very familiar with Isle of Jura, until a few months ago, that is, because Glenn van Bellingen then offered me a plethora of whiskey samples to try, and he said, "You're not very fond of Isle of Jura, but I think I can convert you." And so he offered me all these cask samples, and I have to admit, Isle of Jura does put out quite a few beautiful whiskies indeed. Malts of Scotland, their first Isle of Jura, bourbon hogshead, as you can see. Let's give this a go. Let's see if Glenn van Bellingen is right about this whiskey. Now, you don't know this, but he's right over there, outside of the camera view, very nervous because he thinks, "Ooh, I haven't tried it yet, he hasn't tried it yet, what's he going to think about it?" But he needn't worry, because I can already see that this is a full-bodied whiskey. You can see the high viscosity, which merely means it beats beautifully, thick drops coming down the glass rather slowly, revealing a full-bodied whiskey. It's not typically Isle on the nose. Isle of Jura, I mean. Not typical Isle of Jura at all. I get loads of vanilla. I get caramel, deep caramel, like Werther's original candy, you know. Very sweet. But very accessible. It's soft and creamy. This is nice. This is inviting. Let's give this a try. On the palate then. Mouth coating. Very sweet on white fruit. Got some apples. Bit of pears. Very spicy as well. I get some white pepper, some camphor even. This is good. This is full-bodied, mouth coating, and when you swallow it, it warms your insides, which is always a good thing. But I wouldn't recognize this as an Isle of Jura whiskey if I were to taste it blind. I would not say it's an Isle of Jura, so it's a bit of an atypical Isle of Jura whiskey. But it's got a very good mouthfeel, mouth coating, it's spicy, a touch of smoke. There's definitely some peat in there. Now, you know, back in the day, when it was first erected, the distillery, they had a very heavy, very peaty whiskey at Isle of Jura. Nowadays, they make both peaty, lightly peated, and non-peated whiskey. But this clearly is a little peaty. There's a bit peat in the aftertaste on the end. Now, the finish I find to be medium to long, actually. Quite. It's on the finish that it actually reveals the Isle of Jura traits. Whenever I taste Islay, I have this feeling of something dusty, something dirty in the mouth. That's not negative. It's a bit dirty in the mouth, like jute bags, you know, like the jute that they use to transport grain and stuff like that. That's what I'm reminded of in this case with this Isle of Jura whiskey, only in the finish. So it's a bit of an atypical whiskey, a bit of an atypical Isle of Jura whiskey, but nevertheless, this is quite nice, and it's perfectly drinkable, eminently quaffable without water, even though it is bottled at high strength, 50.3 if I'm not mistaken, but eminently quaffable without water. So I should say, when next time I meet Glenn, which is about 30 seconds from now, I'm going to tell him, Jura Glenn, you know your stuff. This is a nice Isle of Jura, and I'm getting me one. Slanjwa. Well, I guess that's all for this Whiskey Rambling here at Cuvée Idée with Koen and Ingrid, who run this wonderful shop. If it's wine, if it's beer, if it's bubbles, whatever you need, you can find it here at Cuvée Idée. And of course, as you can see here around me, they also have quite a nice collection of whiskies. Koen specializes in independent bottlers, and this Isle of Jura is a perfect fit for that portfolio from Cuvée Idée. This is a nice whiskey. I hope to see you again at one of Mark's Whiskey Ramblings real soon. Until then, may the malt be with you. Bye bye.